welcome back. It's been a while since I've been back on this channel, so thank you so much for sticking around, and a lot that's happened, so let me catch you up a bit. In the end of last year and earlier this year, I've been on the road traveling for a couple months, and I've only brought film cameras with me. One of the disadvantages of only be shooting film is that you don't get to see any of those photos until much later. In fact, I haven't developed most of the film from my trip. However, I brought my Polaroid i2 with me throughout the travel, and that was the only way that I was able to see some of my captures in real time. And if you've seen the video I've made on this camera's release from last year, you know that this camera in particular pushed me into a new level of film photography, and especially photography in Polaroid format. So for 2 months in this past summer, I've been challenging myself with a new approach and new mindset to Polaroid film. If you didn't know already, Polaroid recently released a completely new chemistry to their black and white film. I wasn't exactly good at using this new film or just black and white Polaroid in general, so I'd like to take you along with me throughout my journey of slowly getting better at utilizing this new film format. And I waited until that day in early June when I absolutely ran out of color Polaroid in my fridge, so I have to force myself in finally testing out this new film. So I was running late for an event today. Actually, I'm still running late. I should be there now. I couldn't find more color film to put in my Polaroid. So currently, I don't know too much about the new formula. From a few sample photos I've seen comparing to the old formula, it captures skin tone really well and has more dynamic range and depth to the grayscale. I'm going to shoot it today when I'm testing out just at 0, just to kind of see what we have.
The one of her is gonna look so cute.
It's already kind of coming out.
Oh my god.
It's so pretty. I love this. That wasn't a bad first introduction to this film. I quite enjoyed the new monochrome frame. Each frame come out in a different shade of gray. However, I'm never really a black and white shooter, so I struggle to really find things to photograph in black and white. Today's another day that I don't have an idea what I'm shooting and still struggling to define the definition of this project. But I decided to bring out my camera either way, even when I don't feel ready to shoot. I want to be ready when things happen. So yeah, I need to be in multiple locations today. I need to run some errands, and so who knows? Maybe I'll encounter something, maybe I won't. But I want to bring you with me and be honest about everything I do. So let's see. I've always enjoyed talking to people. Even before I showed anything online, I always love bringing my cameras around just to have the stories on the street inspire me in some ways. And I find myself, whenever I feel stuck in some ways, one of the best ways for me to feel inspired again is to find people and talk to people on the street. And usually with those conversations, they will inspire me in some ways or the other. So that day, I took my camera out with no intention and happened to bump into Jacqueline. Hello. Hi. You look very beautiful. Can I take a picture of you if you'd have time, if you don't mind?
Are you in the photo business?
I take photos. That's what I do. I am a photographer.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that's perfect.
Alright. As well. Enjoy your favorite season. Me and Jacqueline talked for 40 minutes, and there were a lot of footages and it was too much to show. But during our conversation, I thought to ask Jacqueline what she thinks of the concept between being a perfectionist or an imperfectionist. This was a new concept of thinking that I was recently introduced to. And being an absolute perfectionist myself, I have always wondered if I could let myself free from the idea of making everything perfect. And maybe is to start when things are not completely put together. And during our conversation, Jacqueline proposed the idea that perhaps an imperfectionist is someone who follows their heart regardless what other people think of them. As long as the things you do make you happy, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. I found something to photograph, maybe. So let's load up the film. There are some broken mirrors on the ground, and I want to capture something of it. Does being an imperfectionist, it means that I will have to find the imperfections in and around my life and capture the broken pieces? I think I took it a little too literal at this time. One of my favorite saying about film photography is that real life is not perfect and film captures life. I think as a film shooter, it is somewhat true that we understand that we should never be too particular in the small details of film photography. There are so many variables that we would never really have a full control of it all. But with the spirit of film captures real life, I thought that I should be enjoying what life has to offer during the summer in New York. Maybe until then I'll find out the true meaning of being an imperfectionist. I asked everyone who I came across to write down their definition of an imperfectionist, hoping that they might give me a new insight into finding out what that means in my own creative journey. Also not care too much. It is inevitable to always be running into a creative block, at least for me. In every project I do, I always find myself going through the bottleneck of creativity, and I almost always feel very discouraged during that time. And having to gone through this process many times, I know that one of the ways that helped me is to communicate with my creative friends, because they are always able to provide some insight in their creative journey and hopefully trying things a new way to help me get through my block. During one of the movie nights in Bryant Park, I was chatting with my friend Jenna about the idea of being an imperfectionist in my creative journey and how that I haven't liked any photos I've taken so far. And she asked me to lay out every photo I've ever taken and try to analyze them to see what do I like out of certain photos and maybe how I can replicate that again in the next photos that I will be taking. Not going to lie, I was very embarrassed to show her what I have taken so far. That's when I realized maybe I need to start over to refresh my mind and redefine what I'm really looking for in this project. After talking to Jenna, I spent the next morning having a quiet photo walk in the neighborhood of Greenwich Village and found myself in one of my favorite stationery stores and spent an embarrassing amount of time in there. While browsing the entire store book by book, I found this little notebook that gave me a new direction into finding the meaning of an imperfectionist. On the front page of this journal, it says to record and document throughout the day, and they don't have to be complete in any ways because over time they will become an evidence of who you were and who you have become. And perhaps that is what I've been searching for all this time. I've been waiting for the complete moment or the 100% in everything I do, while realizing that everything I do now will just be a progress of my work. I suddenly become not so precious of the work that I have been doing and thought I would just have some fun with it. I just took this photo of the notebook that gave me a lot of ideas. When I was taking this photo, I was hoping there is like a pigeon somewhere around here that it was trying to get around but never too close to me. I was hoping that it will enter the frame right here. So since it didn't do it by its own, I'm going to attempt to draw this out. I don't even know how this will look like. I can do abstract, but I cannot draw. Now that we are just halfway through this project and I was finally getting a little more confident in using this film. However, I realized I cannot truly take advantage of this newly formulated black and white formula until that I know the technical aspect of it. So I set out to do a little not so scientific experiment with a new film. I love doing testing and comparison videos, but I know the way that I do these are not in the most controlled environment. However, they do make sense in my head. So let me tell you a few things that I have noticed throughout this test. This test is just to see the differences that each exposure composition will make in this black and white film. To me, each exposure has a different personality. First of all, the old black and white Polaroid formula cannot even stand a chance to compete with the new black and white formula. When shooting at default, the old black and white completely overexposed the highlight. There are little to no details, and the contrast is very drastic. There is almost no dynamic range and mid-tone to the black and white image. While comparing to shooting at default exposure composition, the new film gives a softer contrast and the overall monotone in grayscale is absolutely beautiful. Now, I personally like to underexpose most of my Polaroid film just to give a deeper tone and contrast because that's just the way that I like my Polaroid to be. But as you can see, this new Polaroid film still held up beautifully in overexposure. But let's look at what it can do in underexposure. The way I calculate the exposure compensation is by each stop that I make is a third the exposure value. So at -1/3, it gives this film a beautiful tone. It gives more details in the highlight comparing to shooting it at 0. To me, this looks the most similar to a black and white negative, closest to what HP5 looks like in my head. Now, another third lower at -2/3 exposure compensation, the contrast is brought even narrower comparing to the previous ones. While maintaining a softer highlight and deeper shadows, it doesn't lose details in the deeper tones and it still has a graduate fall off with the light. Now, the photo has an overall grayer overcast that gives the photo a matte finish. This is most similar to what the feeling that a Triax 400 gives me. I think this one really truly shows you what this new black and white film can do. Now that we have a better understanding, I am a little more confident in incorporating this film in my shooting style. Today, I have a little challenge for myself is to take a wrong turn. And what it means is that I have such a habit that I will just go down the road that I know it's going to be photogenic. So today's challenge is whenever I am at a crossroad. I'm gonna take the road that I'm less familiar with, and maybe it's the road that I always reject taking. I usually will go this way, that way, or this way. And rarely do I go this way. I guess so. We're doing this. It has nothing. This road has literally nothing. That's why I never go down here. Look at that. That's just so much life happening there. And I just want to talk about the shadows right here. I am so guilty of taking shadows photos for black and white. I mean, this is the closest to a black and white imagery in real life, and since I don't usually see in black and white, this just seems to see like how this frame is doing right now. This is the easier route in my opinion, and I try to break out of it. Meh. I can't say that I've ever been here. Let's go take a look. Maybe I would take one here, I don't know. Okay, I know I'm planning this, which is not so much for being an imperfectionist, but what I'm seeing is a really bright subject, such as her, going through this shadow right here against a darker background, and then a darker subject, probably a bicycle, going right here against a lighter background, and that as a frame. That's what I'm seeing. Hopefully I can make it. We shall see. I'm going to refer to the photos again. I'm thinking on the darker side, either shooting at -2/3 or -1. I'm seeing the photo developing right now, which I'm also scared that I don't want it to bend it or anything while it's developing. Also, it's such a hot day, so I'm hiding in the shade. Hopefully the Polaroid doesn't get a heat damage. I really genuinely like this photo. I'm surprised I waited. I'm glad I waited this long just to take this shot, but also at the same time, because the Polaroid i2 is a rangefinder, so I need to constantly remind myself if I am really specific or particular of my framing, I need to tilt the camera just slightly towards the left, because the viewfinder is like on the left side of the lens, the actually photo taking lens. So if I were to make sure things are exactly how I framed, I need to always make a slight adjustment towards the left, in this case I wish it was slightly, adjusted to what I see. I don't hate it, and let's see how it develops. I shot it at -1, which I think is a really good choice because it really shapes the photo nicely. What I would do to change either is to bring the camera up a little bit so you have more of that windows details in it, just to create a little more interesting shapes, or to tilt it down even more so that it just right now is awkward framing in my opinion, but still it's very close to my vision, which is really a nice surprise when you're taking Polaroid, since it's such an instant result. The regret could be instant as well. So this one is not so much of a regret, and I'm happy that I waited this long to take this photo, and I don't think it's necessary to recreate one more. I like it as is. But anyways, people in the shop across the street are looking towards this way because they're probably curious why I'm like standing here for this long. I did wait a little longer to take this photo, but anyways, let's keep it going. We started with a really good day, and I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. And the last, like the first pack of today, I got a good shot. Shot that I didn't think I was gonna get today. So I got cocky. The pack that I just put in was not very good. Let's see. Yeah, this shot might be the best I could do today. And then the pigeon, I'm neither gonna confirm or deny that oh, thank you. Today has been a great challenge. Going the route that I don't usually take, and then led me to this restaurant. Guess I'm glad that I took the route that I did. Before the start of this creative journey, I always know that I ultimately wanted to end it on a high note. I just didn't know it was gonna end on such a high note. Truly, these are some of my favorite photos that I have ever created with the Polaroid. I would have never chosen to shoot black and white during a firework. So I did bring a pack of color film with me, but when I saw them side by side, I realized that black and white were just so much more superior due to the instant format of Polaroid photography. We're able to see the scene in real time inside of a Polaroid frame, and that transition to me is always as a fun screenshot of life. But throughout this process of taking Polaroid in black and white film made me realize that Polaroid is capable of doing more than just that. When you take away the colors in a Polaroid frame, it immediately transformed the moment into a different space. It made you see real life differently. It made you analyze the textures and the memories and the emotions more prominently in a black-white format. It teaches you to stand back and appreciate what's happening right in front of you at the moment. So the firework wasn't just about the colorful sparkles, but more about the people who are viewing it and the memories and the stories that they are experiencing. So thank you for coming along this journey with me, testing out the new black and white Polaroid film and essentially learning how to take Polaroid in black and white. And this journey of becoming an imperfectionist isn't what I thought at all in the beginning. Maybe being an imperfectionist is not just being the opposite of a perfectionist. Throughout this journey, I realized that being an imperfectionist is a mindset and perhaps a practice that you can also utilize in your own creative journey. As artists, I think everyone should thrive for doing their best and thrive for perfection. However, our creative journey is not only linear. We're constantly in the progress of getting better. And if we constrain ourselves in the mindset of not to start until everything is set to perfection, we will lose the authenticity in our creative progress. Nothing is perfect in this world, and that's why it is so beautiful. And to be an imperfectionist who has the urge to create regardless what they have available in hand, to me is when I ran out of color film in the beginning and have to dive straight into this new format. And it's when I ran into Jacqueline and have this beautiful conversation about expressing yourself unapologetically, when I find new ways to improvise on the work that I have been creating so far. And it is the journey of me talking to friends and having them write what they think of their creative journey, and is me taking wrong turns in my cities and finding new adventures around me. I hope that this video can also encourage you to find peace in your creative journeys. Our journey and progress is what makes our art beautiful. So I hope that you will also take this mindset as a challenge to start documenting your journey right away. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you Polaroid for giving me this chance to share my journey and to test out the new black and white film. I'll see you next time. Did I bring...
Oh, you brought the wrong... No, it's the eye type. Oh, I guess that's a wrap.
I'm stupid.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying you're like stupid, but wrong film. Wrong film.